with anything you do in life, you should ask yourself, what is the goal here? If your goal is, I just want to finish up work, get home, drink my beer, and watch TV, you will accomplish that goal. Absolutely. But what does that get you in life? Great, you've watched all the Seinfeld episodes or King of the Hill or whatever, and it's funny, it's having a good time, but like...
I feel personally attacked.
What does it accomplish, though? Like, I've actually hit a point in my life, I stopped consuming fiction. I don't watch any streaming services. I just like doing stuff. It's like an addiction in and of itself.
Travis, thanks for coming in. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, I'm mid-40s. I've been a rather active and motivated person my whole life. You know, I started software development as a young kid. I grew up in the deep country. There was nothing to do out there. We didn't have cable TV. My closest friend was over a mile away, you know, and after that, none. So it's like, for my spare time, I would just goof around on a computer as a kid that my grandfather bought me, learning to code and stuff. And I just stuck with that every summer and, you know, got into it as a career over time.
So now you're a software programmer?
Yes, I'm a software engineer. My day job is I make a programming language and the IDE to code it in.
What does that mean in layman's speak?
People code in a language that I write. So like people code in common languages like C or something, C++, Python, yes. There's a lot of niche languages out there that people have never heard of. It's used in like medical automation and stuff, mostly the clerical aspects of it.
Medical automation. So what you said was IDE? What was?
An IDE is the thing you type. It's like the word processor. The IDE would be like Microsoft Word, but in our case, it's the code editor.
Oh, so you program the code editor itself.
And the language too, yes.
Okay.
The IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment.
Yeah. That's an interesting combination, being a computer guy and being a help guy.
Yeah.
There's so much sitting going on.
Yes, ironic, yes. So, you know, I actually will give kudos to my job. It's my job that started the domino. So I was like 50, 60 pounds heavier than I was today. And they just had like a very small place out of New York here. And they just had a rule of thumb. They went for a walk, sometimes 2 walks a day, like 10 in the morning. Okay, everyone, let's all get together, do a little walk around the building a few times, like a mile, basically. I just stuck with it. And they're out of Ithaca. I'm up here in Syracuse, so I'm remote most of the time. So I just kept with the walks. When they went out to walk, I'd leave my desk too and walk around the neighborhood or around our satellite office. And I just stuck with it. And one of the big things I'm into is like personal improvement. In a language, we create words when something has value or importance, right? And in Japanese, they have a word that I like called kaizen. I use their word because we don't have a word for this. I can translate it. What does it mean? It really means constant improvement. I think there's a really infamous documentary out there, Dreams of Jiro, the sushi guy he's in like a subway station in New York City, and he's considered the sushi master of the world, right? He's like, I don't know, 70, 80, 90 years old, very old man, right? And he got interviewed once and they asked him, what's it like to have perfected sushi? And you could visibly see he was insulted by the question because he was like, you can't perfect anything. I'm still a student. You know, he's been doing sushi for like over 50 years. He's considered the best in the world. And I thought it was an interesting concept, you know, Kaizen, just constant improvement. Where can you improve this? Where can you do better here? So back on the walking thing, the same thing. It's right. Walk. Okay, now I'm walking a mile. Let's walk more than a mile. Okay, let's walk that more than a mile faster. You know, let's track it. Let's buy the Fitbit or the Apple Watch, track that and go with that. It's like just continuing until it became like doing a 5K a day. And that's like a good standard. After a certain point, you know, diminishing returns, you gotta, you know.
Oh, so your health fanaticism sort of was born sort of from these walks at the job a little bit.
Yes, actually.
You weren't really like run the 5Ks when you're 18 or whatever.
No, it's a semi-recent, right? I mean, I've been doing the walks for, you know, walking a 5K for, you know, for years, but it's like, let's just keep amping it up, and now, like, you know.
Yeah, I love that concept of motivation. You said it was Kaizen. I've heard also, like, you know, a lot of coaches and things like that will talk about you're in competition with yourself. Don't be in competition with anybody else. Like
yes.
Can you be better or do things higher performance than you were yesterday?
Sure, of course. I mean, because if you measure yourself by your peers, which isn't a horrible measurement, but your problem's going to be you'll only be as good as your peers, right? What about the next friend group over? What about the next city? How can you be an Olympic swimmer if you're only trying to be the best swimmer in your high school? I mean, that's great. You're the best swimmer in your high school, but maybe be the best in the state, maybe the best in the U.S., you know?
So were you competitive as a child? I know you said that you got into computing partially because your friends were far away. You
Sure.
did a lot of them. So you got into computing. What was computing like back then? And was it competitive, or was it sort of just like this thing where you were just trying to build it was all your own internal thing going on?
Well, the internet existed. Nobody used it, including myself, right? Everything was more private back then. So this would have been, like I said, I was 9 years old. This would have been like about almost 1985 on the dot.
It's kind of the birth of the digital computing.
Personal computers, yes.
Sure, PC era.
So yeah, I was just coding up little games. I mean, I'm 9 years old, so what's cool to me? Video games. And like I just had an old Atari, which was, didn't have Nintendo. So I just was playing the idea of games. A lot of them were text-based. Like you'd have to use little text graphics, just lines, not pixels and colors and dots too much. So I was just playing with that. And by 11, I entered middle school. There was a book on programming games for the Apple. I know I had a Commodore, not an Apple, but they were both written in BASIC, so it's a similar language. So I was actually, by 11, I was converting Apple BASIC to Commodore BASIC so I could make the games work on my computer.
Wow, so how does that, I guess it was floppy disks back then?
Eventually. At first it was cassettes, actual audio cassettes. Yeah, so I would take my used audio cassettes, or I'd get like a 3-pack at the store, and you just record it. Like a modem, quite literally, right? When you dial up on a computer and it makes all those sounds, that's what it's recording on the cassette tape. Because I would actually take the cassette tape out once and put it in my stereo and played it back just to like, what does it sound like? It's just random noises, of course.
I didn't know that at all. I didn't know that before floppies, it was like audio was doing the encoding somehow.
Yes, technically, yes. I mean, and it's actually, that stuff is still used to this day because one of the benefits of tape, it's really cheap. So they can generate large reels of it and store lots of data. So even to this day, they still use tape for backups.
Okay, so what's the process like taking a cassette Apple game, or you said it was an Atari game, and then switch, or Commodore or something, and switching it over to the other language?
I'd have to read the code and try to understand it. It's definitely like a puzzle, right? It's not impossible. They're all little things, right? Like the funny thing is, it's not that programming is hard. You have to think of things on a microscopic scale, right? I'm self-taught, but I did take a little bit of computer science, and this one teacher I knew had an interesting way to describe it. He said, to explain how programming works, well, explain how do I get from this chair over there? And if you ask someone that, they're like, I just stand and walk over there. Okay, fine, but that's not how you program. How do you program? Tell me the steps. Stand up, walk over there. Okay, great. But you didn't describe the steps yet. I flex this muscle, I move this foot forward. You have to realize that programming is like little Lego blocks. They're very, very simple microscopic pieces, and you're just doing all the increments to get to your goal.
So it's a kind of an iterative game like the one a lot of us had in elementary school, and the teacher said, all right, what are the steps to making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? And then you're like, well, you go get the peanut butter, you get the jelly, you get the bread. Have you heard of this before?
Yes, I have.
And then she would be like, well, what do you mean? How do you get to the bread? And then you have to break it down further. I walk. Well, how do you walk? Oh, I never thought about it that way before. I have to put my one foot in front of the other. What's a foot? What's a leg? It's the femur, it's this, the other thing.
That's what programming is. You have to over-explain everything because you have to realize you're telling a machine that doesn't actually understand anything. Do this, do that, do this, do that, in the most simplistic terms possible.
Wow. So you were doing that into your teenage years and stuff, and then by the time you were late teenager, so you're saying you didn't really go to college because you said you only took a little bit of the class?
I took one semester and realized I'd been doing it for 10 years at that point, so the college was not teaching me anything I didn't already know. So I did it for a semester. I ended up dropping out, and I picked up a help desk job. It's a pretty popular way for people who get in computing, right? Took a help desk job at like 19 years old or so. Knowing computers so well, I did pretty well there, and just continued with it. And I was doing like websites for companies back in the 90s on the side, and the company I was working for knew I was doing that, and they're like, oh, we need a website. So they're like, oh, let's have Travis do it. So they created a position for me, and I got that job. And that's it. After that, it's kind of like a whole domino effect of working in the industry.
But you stuck around. You never decided to go out west to Silicon Valley.
No.
Upstate New York.
No, not that would have been a bad choice, but there is the classic. You have to ask yourself: do you want to be a big fish in a small pond, or do you want to be a small fish in a big pond? It's like Silicon Valley, New York City. I would do fine, I'm sure, but I'd be a dime a dozen. It's like you go to these more rural places, and like there's not a lot of people doing what you do, so you can usually do better if you're fine with the lifestyle.
Okay, I guess probably last question about early life would be, now that you find yourself such a motivated guy, such a career successful guy, what were your parents like? What was your family like growing up?
Sure. My parents were obviously middle class. My father used to manage a construction company. They're both still around, of course. So my dad was actually really motivated. I learned more from example, though, than lesson. I don't seem to recall my dad specifically teaching the lessons, at least verbally, but visually, yes. He had a little shop behind the garage. He worked on things. Even when I was a kid, like my dad built I had like 100 little wooden blocks. He just cut them himself. Why? He's got a whole, wood shop in the back. My dad built his house. Him and his construction friends, they built each other's houses. That's how they did it. So they didn't have so while it wasn't that he was paid a fortune, but when you don't have a mortgage, life becomes a little bit easier. So each one of them would build each other's house in turn, So, my dad was really proactive too. He worked in his retirement now, he works on cars and stuff, and lots of little physical little projects too. So I definitely think that influenced me, in my lifestyle.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure you can teach motivation. I do think it's something that can be polished, something you can view. You can at least see other people around you being motivated, and hopefully that would inspire, yourself or others.
Yeah, that makes sense. And your parents still together to this day?
Yes.
Yeah. Are you only child?
No, I have a younger brother and sister.
Okay. And they both also sort of straight and narrow guys?
My brother is, yeah. So that's why I'm not sure that it can be outright taught per se. I think it depends on the individual if they do or have the spark for just being motivated, just want to do stuff,
Yeah, you definitely had a good influence with your parents. You don't hear about a dad necessarily constructing a whole house with his friends every day.
Yeah, and that's everything too. Plumbing, electrical, like pretty much
amazing.
Everything, which is more impressive when you think about it, right? And it's not like it's slapped together, it's well built. And while I wasn't into construction, I was like, I'm more of the typing guy, not the get my hands dirty kind of guy. So it's like pros and cons there, right? So it's kind of funny because how my dad exercised his motivation is a complete 90-degree pivot from how I do it, right? I'm more tech-based focused, but still,
It's sort of just like the timing, in the 60s, 70s, 80s, it was still more hands-on mechanics, like the things of life.
Yeah.
Nowadays,
engines
it's
and
silicon.
stuff. Yeah, now it's digital toys.
Digital toys. And so, you're not too different from him in that sense.
Yeah, no, definitely. And he did have a computer, right? I mean, after that first computer, my dad bought a computer and I just switched over to that one. So.
Hi, cool, man. That's so wonderful to hear about your family life growing up. Well, let's talk a little bit more about the health fanaticism. When did that pretty much begin? I know it happened vis-a-vis your working life.
Yeah, so I mean, the walking right kicked off in 2017, and it's just like because of I'm always looking for another improvement. I switched back to a more basically a traditional keto type of diet, right? So no sugars, no carbs, and that started to kick off in 2019, and then just keep accelerating until I eliminated, all sugar and carbs out of my diet. Which then, of course, means, I start to eliminate modern food, right? I decided, mankind's been around for, 100,000 years. I decided to, if we can be sure about anything, nutritional science has been all over, back and forth. They've tried to tell you eggs are good, eggs are bad, eggs are good. My thought is, if we've been eating this thing for 99,900 years, probably has been good for us. We've evolved eating these things. And I've switched my entire diet to basically what people eat 200 years ago. So it's like there's 21 meals a week. I cook 19 of them. I just go out for 2 meals a week after that. I just eat meat and vegetables. That's it.
What's a typical day look like with your diet?
Sure. I mean, I'll get up. I'll try to do my run in the morning if I can, temperature depending, right? New York can get cold in wintertime. After the run, take a shower, cook breakfast. That tends to be like 3 eggs and a pork chop, some kind of meat. For lunch, I'm either going to have a Cobb salad, which is a meat-heavy salad. And I make my own dressing because, I don't consume anything that's modern. So I'm just having like olive oil, seasoning, vinegar, as salad dressing because they're all putting, various chemically extracted oils and stuff. And I'd rather just have real food is how I look at it, right? The way I do this stuff is that we consume a lot of things that are edible, but is it really food? Because I would define food as something that's nutritional. It brings nutrition to the table. If I was to go back to your house, scrape the bark off the tree, dry it out, grind it up, that's technically a form of flour and I could make bread with it. Is there any nutrition in that tree bark? Of course not. So as far as I'm concerned, just because something's edible doesn't make it food. And I think all too often, myself included, right, my past, is our diet's full of things that are edible, but not things that are food. So I've just switched to a complete food-only diet, real food.
All right, so we mentioned the Cobb salad and
Sure.
and now we get to the afternoon.
Sure. So a lot of times I'm eating just hamburger, high-fat content hamburger, pound and a half, 3.5-pound burgers for lunch. Eat that at least 5 times a week, if not, or the Cobb salad. Maybe something random, but that's usually it. And then for dinner's not too far off. Could be fish, could be pork chop, could be more often than not, if I didn't have burgers for lunch, I'll have burgers for dinner, kind of thing. So it's a very beef-heavy diet, for sure. Beef is pretty diverse nutritionally. You probably heard if you look out there'll be some people that go really extreme. I'm not trying to be extreme with it. Just focus on 95%. I feel like if you get 95% right, the last 5% doesn't matter too much. So it's like, am I guilty of having a sugar-free energy drink sometimes? Yeah, of course. Everyone has their vices, but I just avoid sugar. So I'm consuming a little bit of synthetic stuff, some chemicals here and there, but
Any caffeine at all?
Yeah, coffee's fine. Yeah, I don't see any problem. I will drink alcohol, but no, I'll drink no beer. It'll be a gin-based cocktail or a tequila-based cocktail, and I just try to avoid syrup. So it's just like some lime juice, soda water, and whatever on the rocks.
This stuff is so fascinating, because we all grew up with the food pyramid, with the majority of the calories supposed to come from starches and grains. And nowadays, you're starting to hear about what you're talking about as perhaps a lot healthier, the carnivore, the keto.
Yes.
And, you've got like influencers like Rogan talking about it. You've got famously Jordan Peterson's daughter, Michaela Peterson, says that she cured her autoimmune diseases and stuff by switching to all beef.
All beef. It's very strict. It's not as dangerous as people think it is, right? I think the problem is that people are like, what about your vitamins and stuff? But what people are overlooking is that your body produces most of what you need. Beef contains the building blocks your body needs to produce it. So what do you need after that? The answer is not really a vitamin pill. I'm not, yet again, that's still just plant extracts. What people overlook is that the only thing you need after the beef would be what's called essential nutrients. There's not a lot. I forget off the top of my head. There's like 13 to 16 of them. And you'd be surprised some of the things that are essential that's in your diet anyways, in the beef. You actually will get a trace amount of vitamin C from beef because cows have vitamin C in them, for example, right? But it's like, yeah, you just might want to add a couple of bits. So like I say, I'm keto-carnivore, so I'm 90% meat, 10% vegetables. By volume approximately. Not that I don't weigh it, but just give or take. So I'm not concerned about that I'm lacking anything. And that's all you really need.
Oh, interesting. So no, you don't take vitamin C and you don't eat really citrus either.
No. Technically I do put lime juice in my drinks. So I am getting vitamin C that way, actually, from alcohol, ironically. But like I said, that goes back to what I said.
People want to hyper-focus on oh, you did that one thing, you're bad. Oh, you're super strict on your entire diet, but you drink alcohol.
Yeah, you're bad then.
But I'm focus on the first 95%. If you have 95% perfected, the last 5% is statistically irrelevant.
Well, that's a positive message for a lot of
people. Yeah. And that's directional. It's once you have that first 95%, you could keep going further. You could get stricter and stricter. It comes down to, but you have to put life into living.
I'll have a cheat meal now and then. I'll go out for a really fancy pizza and some hard cider, or I'll go out with cocktails and stuff, but that actually do contain syrups and sugar and stuff. But like I said, what are you doing 95% of the time? Because people will, when they don't embrace that, they're just I'll just trickle a little bit of everything everywhere all the time. It's like I could have a candy bar if I want. It's a special treat. The problem is that society has switched to the candy bar is bad, but if I get the fun size, that's okay. But now you have a fun size, you buy a bag full of fun size candy bars, or you just have one or two after every meal. It's you're trickling the bad thing all the time. When instead, how about you just clean up everything and then just have the bad thing as a treat?
Now, those 2 meals when you eat out of the 21, are those essentially cheat meals always, or are they sometimes cheat meals and sometimes not?
One of them is usually a cheat meal, just varies. I'll either do wings, and if they're not breaded, that's not a cheat meal because wings are fine, technically. Might do a seafood. That's not a cheat meal, technically, depending on what you're doing. The pizza would be, right? That's kind of the 3 things. Out of those 2 cheat meals, I'll pick one of those, 2 of those 3 things. So, there is something what I call soft cheating, meaning I'll have the wings, but I'll have cider with it. Yeah, the sugar in the cider, okay. But it's a very soft cheat,
Interesting. Now, was this mostly derived from your own intuition, or is there particular influencers or books that you read, YouTube videos?
There's no one person, right? But I've heard random clips from people, there is one guy that's very good, Vinny Torich is his name. And I ran into him listening to Adam Carolla's podcast. Adam Carolla was the guy that did Loveline back in the 90s.
He's a comedian, right?
He is a comedian. He does a bunch of things, actually. And before Joe Rogan really took off, Adam Carolla was the #1 podcast in the world, and he owns a podcast network too. So he owns like a bunch of shows, and he employs his friends. He's also famous because he's partners with Jimmy Carolla. Yeah, Jimmy Carolla, right? Yeah, they used to do the Man Show together. They were a team, so he's worked with a lot of people, you know. But he brought a guy on there that's technically it's his filler candidate. Whenever if he has a guest that doesn't show up, he has Vinny Torch just pop into the show and just ramble. And Vinny Torch, he labels this, he calls it no grains, no sugar, NSNG, which is same thing, right? I'm avoiding carbs, grains, and avoiding sugar. And that's where I really learned about, I've heard about keto, people have heard of Atkins. These are all different names for the same thing ultimately. There's a couple minor differences, but they're 95% the same. But that's why I heard him talk about in detail why it works, how it helps, you know. And like I said, I've been doing it for over 4 years now. And I feel amazing. Like I said, I'm in, mid 40s. I don't have any pains. I'm not on any medications. I don't have high blood pressure. I don't wake up, my back doesn't hurt. My knees don't hurt. I feel the same way I felt as I was 22.
Miraculous.
So it's like if something works, stick with it, and it's working.
You mentioned your blood pressure. You seem like a very scientific guy. I mean, have you had your vitals done? Do you look into that kind of stuff?
I haven't done the whole full spectrum blood work thing. I probably will eventually. It just hasn't been super important. It's like I'm not too worried. Like I said, I'm running every day, and I feel great. I don't have any problems. The most interesting thing, a really simple one that was kind of eye-opening for me when I started to realize, like, oh, I'm actually really functioning better. Because you kind of overlook it because it's a small change. It's like losing weight, right? It's like your friends that haven't seen you in 4 months, if you've been losing weight, they're like, oh my God, you've lost so much weight. It's like, I look at myself in the mirror every day. I know I've lost weight, I just didn't notice, right? One way where I realized I had a huge difference, so I had just drank too much like 6 months ago, had a little bit of a hangover, and went to the cabinet to go get some ibuprofen, right? And I look at it, and I realize the ibuprofen's expired. So I was like, I'll grab the aspirin. The aspirin's expired, and you can smell it, right? It smells like vinegar when it expires. So I go, I'll go to my storage and go grab the next bottle. They're expired too, and I realize I haven't bought ibuprofen or aspirin in 4 years because I don't use it. I stopped getting headaches doing this stuff. Like I don't get aches and pains. I don't get headaches anymore. So it's like, that's a sign of something going right.
Nice. And so beyond the running, is that your only exercise regimen, or is there anything else?
That's been the main thing. I've been meaning to get more into more upper body, right? I've kind of fixed the lower body, right? So it's like now I need to focus on, I'm not trying to get ripped, I'm not trying to pick things up and put them down, but like, I want to like get more fit. So like, I've been adding a little bit of push-ups and stuff. I'll probably get some resistive bands. I don't plan on getting a gym or buying a membership to a gym, but just more home exercise. So the running has really been the main thing. But as always, Kaizen applies. So it's like, what's the next thing to add now?
Yeah. I guess I've had a couple things just to think about. Like if an average person's watching this today and they're like, oh man, I'm so like out of shape or whatever. I'm so overweight. I'm so unhealthy, my vitals, XYZ. What would you recommend that they might do today or tomorrow to improve their health?
Sure. So, I mean, obviously the biggest sticklers out there would be like, just quit everything. I don't actually advocate for that. If someone wanted to say, I want to go carnivore, but I can't give up my potato chips, can't give up this, just quit one thing a week. Doesn't matter what it is. Turn it, just change it up, right? Just every week, make one little change, right? It's like, okay, so I love sodas, but I only have 2 sodas a day. Okay, cut back to 1 soda a day. Okay, save the sodas for special occasions, Monday and Friday.
Save the soda when you just go out. And you go out having pizza, you can only have a soda when you go out to have pizza.
Keep cutting back, because that goes back to what Kaizen really is, right? Constant improvement. Because once you start doing that, it's like, you're approaching your health goal slower, but it's also teaching you the important lesson of slow improvement. Because you'll never really run out of something to improve. You'll find the next thing, just like me running. It's like, I can run a little bit longer. I can run a little bit faster, If you make little changes, you won't even know you miss it. But if you quit everything overnight, you're going to miss it. And then you're going to crash and burn,
So you're such a motivated person. You've had this whole career with software programming. Tell us a little bit more about some of your side projects and businesses that I know you had mentioned in the email.
Sure. Yeah. I've done lots of little things, like I was doing websites on the side for companies back in the 90s, and that did help with my, IT career, getting me launching there, right? The company I was working for hired me for web stuff. I dabbled with that on and off, but as I did it for a job, I stopped doing it on the side because I tried to do some separate stuff on the side. I owned a coffee shop for a little while. That's just that's just hard. A lot of
Is
physical
that
stuff.
hard? Yeah.
It is.
Were you behind the counter? Did you hire people as baristas? How did that work?
Yeah, some part-time people and stuff. That's a hard market to get into, let's be honest. And this is when Starbucks was just starting to really take off. So it's like, you can't compete with these mega companies. So that didn't work out. Lots of little things, wedding planning business. I started to do a vlog. After that, I started to flip some antique stuff on the side, going to auctions and stuff, buying antique or vintage and antiques, flipping that. Started to do a vlog in 2014. That took off a little bit, right? Got into camera work, photography, and then videos. So that ran its course for a good 3 to 4 years. And then I've got the camera gear. Let me find something that pays money for the camera stuff. So dabbling and shooting some weddings on the side, ironically unrelated to the wedding planning business, but there I go back in that industry again. Just working with other videographers and shooting weddings with them. Stuff like that. That's been the bulk of it, really. And then trying to get into more creative stuff now, because yet again, where can I improve? Because shooting a wedding is a technical thing. Everyone wants to be technically correct. It wants to be clean. No one wants to get wild and crazy and zany. It's just a wedding. So I started dabbling in music videos next, because at least that's where you can get really creative, because weddings are more like painting a picture. You can just do whatever you want video-wise, get crazy with the camera.
Do you work a lot of hours per week?
I guess so. It's not. There's a saying, right? If you enjoy what you do, you don't see it as work. I mean, my work is my day job, the 9 to 5. After that, literally, I could literally stop my day job and then boot up, my video stuff and start editing a video and editing photos after that. So, and I'm always looking for stuff. One of the things too is I never say no to anything. Even the stuff that doesn't pay, if it's still in my wheel well, I just see it as experience. It allows me to meet people, and a lot of times when you meet people, they'll need a favor or they'll need you somewhere else. So it's like I don't say no to anything. I don't ask the question, is it worth my time? I just do it, because everyone's like, oh, I don't have time to pick up a camera and do that. My thought is, well, did you watch television for the past 4 hours on a Tuesday night? You had time. Did you just sit in bed until 1 p.m. on a Saturday? You had time. You can just do what you want with your time. But I kind of view it as, I don't think anyone in this world is too busy. I have a child. I'm not too busy. I have a day job. I'm not too busy. I have side hobbies. I'm not too busy. Maybe Elon Musk is too busy. That's a man that does a lot of things. But everyone else, you just pick and chosen. So my goal is to fill up every waking hour of the day, which I still haven't done yet. And then now I'm busy, and then I can start not doing things. I can pick things not to do. Haven't hit that point yet in my life.
Wow. So you notice a lot of energy improvement though once you started this diet, right?
Oh yes, yeah.
So a lot of people
helps.
sure, yes, they're watching 4 hours of television on a Tuesday night, but at the same time, part of their excuse would be, hey man, I worked all day, I worked out, whatever, I'm exhausted. Mm-hmm. Did you ever experience that, or did you have or was the carnivore something that, you know what I mean, before the carnivore, did you ever have any of that, or you just naturally
a little? I mean, like I said, I do feel like I am just unusually motivated. But what the thing is, relaxing. Unpopular opinion, relaxing doesn't energize you. In my opinion, it has the opposite effect. I mean, just talk to anyone that works out or whatever, runs. After you run, you don't want to go take a nap. You're energized. This is why so many people work out in the morning or do their run in the morning. It kicks off your day, It's that, I mean, and I don't mean overexerting yourself, right? I get it. If you're a bodybuilder and you're powerlifting 500 pounds, you're just wrecking your body, right? You're probably all sore and beat up. If you go do a run, I don't feel sore after the run. I don't feel beat up, Maybe at first when you first start doing it, but after you get your strength up and stuff, no, it just motivates you, So
your metabolism is up.
Yeah, your metabolism is up. Mentally, you're on the ball now. You're firing up. I think the more active you are, the more active you feel.
So do you sleep?
Yeah. You have to realize, I mean, being so active, I go to sleep pretty early, actually. I might go to bed as early as 10 p.m. These days, 10, 11. With a busy day, you definitely go to sleep. I think part of the problem is when you're sedated all day, sitting in a chair all day, then sitting on a couch all day, you're more likely to just lounge around and go to bed at midnight, 1 a.m. on a work day, And it's like, what are you staying up for? What are you waiting for? It's like, I think there's a subconscious aspect there. I think mentally, subconsciously, you haven't done anything positive with your day, and you're just waiting for something to happen, but nothing will ever happen until you just quit and go to bed. For me, I've been busy and accomplishing all day. So when I go to bed at 10 p.m., I'm not quitting early. I had a busy day, and I'm done.
Do you have any system? I know you like to talk about motivation, and you mentioned grit before the interview. Do you have any system to your motivation? Do you do systems or goals? I don't know if you've heard of those at all.
Yeah, oh, yes. I forgot. It was
Scott Adams that did this.
yeah, Scott Adams. He talked about systems, not goals, right?
Yeah, like every day you're going to do this stuff instead of thinking, I got to achieve that.
Yeah,
You're going to do the things that are going to get you to those goals instead of having to instead of focusing on those goals themselves, you focus on the things that are going to
get you towards the goal, right? Yeah. So if you just tell yourself, I'm going to lose 50 pounds, great. But if you say I'm going to lose 50 pounds in 6 months and you lose 45 pounds, are you a failure? Well, in some ways, a lot of people will say, yes, you didn't lose 50 pounds. But if instead what Scott Adams basically had alluded to is that if you focus on like, I'm going to cut this out of my diet, my goal is just to lose as much as I can this week. Maybe that's 2 pounds, maybe it's 10 pounds, who knows? But whatever that number is, he's lost some weight. It's like, well, I've plateaued. Let's make one more change. Let's remove one more thing. So yes, if you keep doing incremental, I think for most people, incremental works.
Does Kaizen come from a specific Eastern religion or philosophy?
I don't think it does. I don't know the history of it. I was more concerned about the meaning, the idea of Kaizen, not the historical.
Well, yeah, I guess I'm just getting at like whether or not you have an overriding religion or philosophy or spirituality.
No, I mean, like, not really. If I had to pull a name out of the ether, I would just use the word pragmatism, just picking things apart and putting them back together, and getting there. I mean, because I use pragmatism for programming, right? Picking, assembling things, even how I approach my diet, right? It's like, just ask myself, okay, all these diseases are going up, cancer is going up, Alzheimer's going up, autism is all these things are going up. So what's changing? Well, I'm not saying it's the sole cause, but food is changing. Food has been changing nonstop. We all take it for granted. Snacking is a modern invention. Snacking was invented 70 years ago. That sounds crazy. The potato chip was invented in the 1950s. What was the snack before potato chips? Not really. You just ate when you were hungry for the most part. So it's like, and flavored potato chips were invented in the 70s. That's not that long ago. That's 50 years ago. Right? Yeah. So it's like, people take these things for granted. Like we've been around for 100,000 years. I'm pretty sure the thing we've been doing for 50 years is unproven out of the past 100,000 years. So that's why I just went back to I just want to eat how everyone ate 200 years ago, because they didn't have these flood of problems of all these little, mental health, obesity, etc. This whole domino effect.
That's so true. Yeah. There's certainly a correlation between the rise of processed foods and snacks and today's illnesses and ailments that are so widespread.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. It's incredible that one of our biggest problems these days is too much food, obesity. That's never been the case in human history.
Yes, correct.
The only people that were plump like that were maybe the king or somebody, the head chieftain who could afford to, eat all the food. But
sure, yeah, of course.
Or not, certainly.
You can look at old countries and look up when did they have famines. Okay, great. So when was the last American famine? I don't think we ever had one.
You say it's time.
No, it's not time. Definitely, no, not that. But we should. That is the problem. Right? We've just like we've made clothes cheap and plentiful. We've made a lot of products cheap and plentiful. It was, and in many ways, that's kind of a mistake, right? I mean, making like devices and speakers and headphones that last you a year and a half and they break, you throw them away. There's nothing green about that. We're not recycling that. We've done it to food too. We've made food cheap and disposable. That's where we're at now. It's been for the benefit, right? There is pros, right? We don't have famine because of it, but we definitely took it too far.
Yeah, this planned obsolescence in technology is now getting to human lives because of the food we're eating.
Yes.
Oh, no, I love your story, man. I love your message. Do you have any final thoughts at all to people about motivation and grit and Kaizen?
Sure. I mean, the goal isn't just to magically become better. You have to try to become better. You can't just be better overnight. You're not gonna run a 5K your first try. You're not going to win an award the first time you try to do something. Just focus on getting yourself towards there. I think the problem is people think you have to jump in the pool and learn how to swim, but you could tread water first.
I like to view these things kind of like a pyramid of like the bottom of the pyramid is like everything that's possible in the world. That also can mean what you can accomplish job-wise. And as you do these things, they'll lead you towards some destination. Right?
So I've not chosen my destination, right? What am I trying to do in life? Yes, make videos, be healthier, sure. But it's like, what's the end goal? I don't really know. But I just know if I keep picking good things,
They all start to converge at some point. They do converge.
Very pragmatic.
yes.
Yeah. So start with those 10 a.m. walks, and then you'll maybe someday get to these 5K runs. I love it, man. Well, thanks so much for the interview.
Thank you.
And that's what grit really is, right? Your failures don't define you. They're just part of the process. It's like what people think success is, try, succeed. Success is fail, 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 success kind of thing.
Yeah, like business people will say, like, to keep them going, their mantra is like every no leads them closer to the yes.
Yes, exactly, yeah. And there's also another concept to this parallel. They call it fail fast, meaning if you just take your time doing something, well, if something's going to fail, it's going to take a long time to fail. How does that benefit you? Instead, you should be, hitting the gas full speed because your goal is to fail as quickly as possible. Because either it's going to work or it's going to fail. And the faster you fail, the faster you know that wasn't the way.